because with the power that schools, private schools in particular, have over students, and to be able to do that within a 24-hour span and change the whole trajectory of a kid's life when they're 15, 16, 17, they shouldn't be able to do that.
Welcome to Anatomy of a Lawsuit, where we break down the cases that shape free speech and due process and the laws that govern them. I'm Krista Baumann, partner at Dillon Law Group, where I lead our firm's First Amendment and defamation practice. Today, we're talking about a case that changed how private California high schools must treat their students when controversy erupts. In 2020, an innocent photo taken 3 years earlier of boys doing acne face masks was blasted online with a false claim that it showed the boys in blackface. Within just 24 hours, these boys, my clients, were expelled from their private high school and the lifelong community they had made there. Fast forward to May 2024. After 4 grueling years of litigation, a California jury exonerated my clients, found that their school had denied them fair process, and awarded them over $1 million in emotional distress and tuition reimbursement damages. This landmark victory didn't only vindicate my clients, it extended due process protections to all California high school students. My guest today is Holden Hughes, one of the students we represented in the lawsuit. Holden is now a college graduate and a Division I athlete. He's here to tell us what happened in those first 24 hours after the photo went viral, what it was like to live under a false narrative for years, and what it took to finally clear his name. Holden, let's start at the beginning. A photo someone took of you and a friend when you were just 14 years old resurfaced 3 years later in the middle of the 2020 racial reckoning after George Floyd was killed. And it changed your life overnight. Can you walk us through what that experience was like when you first saw the image online?
I first found out from one of my friends, and he told me to check social media. I went on social media, and it appeared to be all over my Snapchat, and people from my school, from other schools, were posting about it. And at that point, I had never seen the actual picture myself. So as you can imagine, it was quite the surprise to me as well. And really just taken aback by the narrative that people were putting behind it. And the only thing I could do at that point was reach out to as many people as possible and explain the true nature of the photo.
So the photo was of you and 2 friends wearing an acne face mask in support of your other friend with acne. Is that right?
Yeah.
And when the photo surfaced 3 years later in a completely different context, what were people accusing you of?
People were saying that it was blackface, and that, I mean, obviously that we were racist. And then this was preceding a meme page that a couple of St. Francis alumni had gotten caught with that had racist posts on it as well, which was, I believe, a day or two prior.
So in addition to the general 2020 racial reckoning across the country, there had also been an incident at St. Francis that you weren't involved with of real racism. Is that right?
Yes, nothing. I was not involved with that whatsoever.
And when your photo surfaced just shortly after these racist events, and you started to be called, associated with or guilty of having done blackface, what first went through your mind when you heard these accusations?
I was stunned. I, at the time, may be naive or ignorant, but I really didn't know the true nature of what blackface actually was. Obviously, I'd heard the term before, but I'd never been taught it. I didn't really know exactly what it was, so I had to look it up. And once I found out the true nature of it and the history behind it, it really, meant even more, because then I actually knew what it meant.
How quickly did people start reaching out to you on social media or text after you first saw this acne face mask photo of yourself go viral?
It was pretty much immediately afterwards, after I found out about it. I was actually asleep, and then I woke up to missed calls, and then I went on my Snapchat and checked, and people were reaching out to me, people were posting about it, and it was all over my Snapchat. And I told the people that reached out to me the true nature. I reached out to people about the true nature. Um, and people continued to reach out to me for the next few days and weeks about it, just confirming my side of the story, and then that the picture was actually me, because my mom didn't even recognize me. It was when I was 14.
The picture was taken when you were 14, and this all happened when you were 17, almost a senior, right?
Yeah, correct.
And were you successful in explaining to your fellow students what this really was? Did they believe you?
I was. And the people that knew me believed my story, the true story about the nature of the photo. And the people that didn't know me were a little bit skeptical, but again, I was speaking the truth, and the truth adds up. And there were just some aspects about the narrative that was going around that just didn't add up.
So your friends believed you, but that didn't end the story, right? And how did this escalate in the days after the photo went viral?
A few people, students and alumni and parents of students, reached out to the school, to my knowledge, and alerted them about the photo. Some were just telling them about it, others were confirming that we were racist, even though they didn't even know us. And that's how the school found out. And then the school reached out to me and my family.
Holden, in the days after the acne face mask photo went viral, folks at the school became truly outraged. A couple of the parents at the school organized a protest to protest racism in general at St. Francis, and they put a blown up copy of your photo on signs to march around down the streets of Mountain View in protest of racist activities. This was the climate that you were going through when you were trying to convince your friends and peers of the truth, which is that this was an innocent photograph. Tell us how it was like for you to try to air the truth in a climate so hostile.
I think it's just kind of crazy, and just goes to show exactly how powerful uncontrolled narratives can be, whether they're right or wrong. And that just goes to show, like, these are grown adults with pictures of a 14-year-old kid at the time, that they have just heard from other people that it's blackface, they're racist, whatever it may be. And that just really goes to show the power of large groups of people with the same goals in mind, with narratives that they can construe into whatever message they want. And I think it's just scary, but also powerful to show the power of a group of people with similar goals and mindsets. And but obviously for me at the time, it was more scary. And I think it's just crazy. I think we were put as scapegoats, and the school wasn't going to do anything to help us. They actually, administrators were in the march, in the middle of the march, and there's documented proof of that. And I think it's just a crazy concept that we would be thrown to the fire by the people that are sworn to protect us.
So let's talk about the school's response. Within 24 hours of the face mask photo going viral, your school, St. Francis High School, forced you to leave. The severity and speed of that kind of a response raises some serious questions about fairness and due process. Can you tell us how the school communicated with your family about the photo in those early moments, early hours, and what it felt like when they eventually told you you couldn't come back to your lifelong community at the school?
Yeah, so they originally reached out to my parents and told my parents that they were aware of the photo, and they asked for my side of the story, and I told them my side of the story. And that's really all I personally heard from them. They told my parents, I believe it was the assistant dean, said that um, they would let us know if anything changed, which obviously doesn't indicate any sort of disciplinary action taking place in the future or the near future. And within the next 24 hours, I was told that I wouldn't be welcome back at school. And that I still was kind of processing the whole thing again. I'd seen the photo for the first time less than 24 hours ago. And then less than 24 hours later, I was being kicked out of school for the photo that I just saw for the first time. And I think it was kind of shock, and still took me a few days, even weeks, to really be able to process the life altering changes that would be happening in my life that couldn't be reversed, and was based off of hearsay and what other people were saying. And my side of the story didn't really seem to matter to anyone at the school. So
Backing up, 3 years prior, when you and your friends put on the acne face masks, you had done a few of them, right? You had done one that was white, and then the one that was a little bit darker green color. Is that right?
yeah, so the other two friends in the photo had a sleepover. I was not there the previous night, but they had done it literally less than 24 hours before. And then the next day, all three of us were there at a sleepover, and that's when we did that one.
And so presumably you could have shown these other photos to the school and explained that you had evidence that this was truly a face mask photo taken 3 years earlier. Did the school give you an opportunity to share that type of evidence?
We were not allowed to present any evidence whatsoever to the school besides my words and my story. And they pretty much took what I said and what really happened versus what other people were saying, which they have no idea the true nature of the story. Don't know me personally, don't know my other two friends personally. Um, so it's really he said versus she said.
And how did the school justify its decision to essentially expel you overnight for a photograph without hearing your side of the story?
They said at the time, and said countless times throughout the trial, that it was not about the nature or the intent of the photo, but it was more about the impact of the photo and the impact that it had on the community.
So being forced out of school is obviously disruptive enough, but your case had other ripple effects on your ambitions for a career in sports, on your friendships, even on your family's living situation. What changed for you during this time after you realized you could not return to your lifelong community at St. Francis?
At that time, I had wanted to play football in college. That was the sport that I wanted to play. But if I wanted to play any sport, regardless, I would have to move to another state to play my senior year, because the CIF is the California state school rules, high school football or high school sports rules. And it says that if a student is to get kicked out because of a disciplinary violation, then they can't play sports the following year in the state of California. So really was obviously not able to play football or any sports in the state of California. So my parents, being the amazing people that they are, were willing to move out to another state. Me and my dad did. And then my mom and my younger brother stayed at St. Francis, or my brother stayed at St. Francis and they stayed in California. And it was hard. I mean, our family was pretty much split in half, which is, I mean, very tough for anyone, especially when it doesn't really need to happen. Um, and we were welcomed in a new state, but it was still kind of that feeling of being alone. You know, all your friends are still in the same state. Mom and my brother are over there, and pretty much my whole life was still going on as normal back home in California, and I was out here in Utah. And it was a great experience regardless, but it was not easy.
So, because of your forced expulsion and the risk that would pose to your career in sports, essentially you and your dad spent your entire senior year, your last year as a child at home, miles and miles away from your brother and your mom, right?
Correct.
And in addition, you had to leave the lifelong community you had built since at first grade, kindergarten.
Yeah, correct.
And in the wake of your expulsion, did you keep keep up with your friends? Were you able to keep those friendships, or did you lose friendships along the way because of the distance?
I did, yeah. I really tried my best to keep up and talk to all of my friends back home in California on a regular basis. Um, I was, alone a lot of the time in Utah, so I used that alone time to connect and keep up with my friends, talk about their football season, their school year, how it was going, the COVID mandates back then, and just things of that nature, and make sure that I didn't lose those friendships.
And how were you feeling emotionally in your senior year after being, rejected from the St. Francis community?
It was hard, but that ultimately is where I found my faith in Jesus, and I'm very grateful for that. So again, it was very hard, but I'm grateful that it happened because it helped shape me into the man that I am today.
So your family made the decision ultimately to sue St. Francis for its conduct, not just for yourself, but to set a precedent to make sure this type of thing didn't happen to students in the future. From your perspective, why was it important to take legal action? And what was it like going through that process for those who may never have had that situation?
I think the biggest two things are, one is to set the story straight and vindicate me and my friends' names, and just prove to our community and the world that, hey, we can present all of the evidence to a random jury who knows nothing about us, and we want to be able to prove that it wasn't what people were saying it was, and that's what we did. Um, but I think the biggest thing to that, or bigger thing than that, is, like you said, setting the precedent for future students, that doesn't happen to future students, because with the power that schools, private schools in particular, have over students, and to be able to do that within a 24-hour span and change the whole trajectory of a kid's life when they're 15, 16, 17, they shouldn't be able to do that.
And talking about the process of the litigation itself and discovery, how did it feel to be deposed or to listen to the depositions of your teachers and your trusted school administrators and have them answer questions about you?
It was definitely an interesting feeling. Again, going back to the setting future precedents so this doesn't happen again. I don't wish any 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid getting deposed by lawyers and accused of things they didn't do, and made to seem look like the worst person possible. And it was definitely a very interesting feeling. I don't even really know how to describe it, to be honest.
Were you worried that the lawsuit itself might somehow make things worse for you?
I would say that it actually gave me confidence because, again, I knew the truth. I knew this, my side of the story. I knew all the evidence, and it gave me all the more confidence that people on a jury would see this and be able to very obviously tell that this isn't what the school was claiming it is. This isn't what people that didn't even know us were claiming it is, but it really was an acting face mask, and these kids are telling the truth. So in that aspect, I was confident in it.
Your case was successful in extending to high school students a due process right that was previously only available to college students. And in this way might help future students like yourself avoid what you've gone through. Sitting here today, now that it's all said and done, are you happy with your decision to engage in litigation?
Yes, I am. And again, like I said before, the main thing is that it changed the law for future kids so that this doesn't happen. And I think that's the most important thing moving forward. Secondarily to that, it cleared our names and vindicated our names, and it definitely taught me a lot. So
And to catch our listeners up to speed, in May of last year, 2024, at the conclusion of our trial together at Santa Clara County Superior Court, the jury did rule in your favor on the fair process claim. They found that your school had failed to provide you with the bare due process minimum that you were entitled to, including a meaningful opportunity to be heard and to present your side of the story. And the jury awarded you and your co-plaintiff $1 million plus tuition reimbursements and your expenses for having to move to Utah. You've already told us what that verdict sort of meant to you personally and for future students. But what message do you hope private school administrators take from your case and your victory?
The main thing I think would be to not throw the kids that they're supposed to protect to the fire, but to give them due process and hear out all the evidence and do an investigation and do what they are supposed to do, which is care after the kids. And that's not what happened in our case, and that showed, obviously. And I'm just very grateful now that schools are not able to do what happened to us, and that they're going to have to at least be cared for a little more than before.
Well, Holden, thank you for sharing all of that with us. Before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to tell our viewers?
The first thing I would say, and I'm sure that most kids have heard this by now, I heard this when I was a kid, and the internet was not new by any means, but it was still on the come up and not so as widespread as it is today. But your digital footprint is forever. And if you post something, if you say something, if you even like something, like, that's really going to be on the internet forever. So just be wary and cautious of that whenever you're doing anything on the internet. Again, I don't think any kid, any adult should have to go through what we went through, what my parents went through, what my brother went through, what the other family went through in getting canceled, ostracized, be humiliated by the school that did this, have them stand on it, and then go further to say that we're terrible people.
Well, Holden, it's not easy to share your experience, one of the worst experiences of your life, not only over and over in your litigation and trial, but here today with us. So I want to thank you very much for being with us and for being so vulnerable and open with your story.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Very grateful.
You've been listening to Anatomy of a Lawsuit. My thanks to Holden Hughes for sharing a difficult story with clarity and grace. This case highlights how quickly the truth can be twisted, with devastating consequences for student well-being, safety, and reputation. And it's a wake-up call to schools to take the time necessary to confirm the true facts and ensure due process always, no matter how intense the social media firestorms may be. For more information on this case and for resources on student rights and fair procedures, check the show notes. If you found this episode useful, please follow and share it with someone you think it might help. I'm Krista Bauman. See you next time.